What is the true price of kindness? For Amelia Evans, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in debt and desperation, the price was her last meal of the day. She shared it with a homeless old man, a simple act of compassion in a world that had shown her none. She thought she was just giving away a sandwich and some soup. She had no idea she was giving it to a man worth billions. This single act of kindness would cost her the very job she needed to survive, pushing her to the brink of utter ruin before it would change her life and the world forever. The scent of stale coffee and hot grease was the perfume of Amelia Evans's life. It clung to her cheap polyester uniform, worked its way into her hair, and lingered on her skin long after her shift ended at the Silver Spoon Diner. The diner's name was a cruel joke. There was nothing silver about the place, save for the worn-out cutlery that clattered a sad, tinny rhythm against chipped ceramic plates. It was a place for hurried lunches and lonely dinners, a pit stop for people on their way to somewhere better. For Mia, as her friends called her, it was the beginning and end of every single day. Each morning at 5:30 a.m., her alarm clock would shriek, and Mia would begin the ritual of erasing herself. She would plaster on a smile that didn't reach her tired grey-blue eyes, pull her light brown hair into a severe tight bun, and ignore the gnawing ache in her stomach. Food was a luxury, a calculated expense. The staff meal, a bowl of yesterday's soup, and a sandwich with curling day-old bread was often the only thing she ate until she collapsed into bed 16 hours later. Her life was a relentless series of numbers, all of them red. Rent $1,200 for a cramped, drafty studio apartment. Utilities $150. Bus pass $80. And the number that haunted her sleep, the one that felt like a lead weight in her chest, $3,450. That was the initial deposit for the series of intensive physical therapy sessions her younger brother Leo desperately needed. Leo was her sun, her moon, and all her stars. At just 12 years old, he was battling a rare form of juvenile muscular atrophy. He was bright, funny, and drew incredible fantasy worlds from the confines of his wheelchair, but his muscles were slowly, inexorably betraying him. The doctors had recommended a new experimental therapy program at a private clinic run by a specialist named Dr. Isabella Rossi. It wasn't a cure, but it was a chance to slow the disease, to give him a few more years of mobility, of independence. The full program cost a fortune, but $300 or $450 would get him in the door for the initial assessment and the first month. It might as well have been $1 million. Every dollar she earned, every tip she pocketed, went into a worn-out envelope hidden under her mattress. It was a slow, agonizing process. $1 here, $5 there. After 4 months of double shifts and living on practically nothing, she had saved $2 to $975. She was so close, yet the deadline for the deposit loomed just 2 weeks away. The pressure was a physical thing, a constant tightness in her throat. Her boss, Sal, was a man whose personality matched the diner's greasy atmosphere. He was thick-set, with a perpetually sour expression, and a belief that employees were replaceable parts in a machine. Evans Table 4 is waiting. You're moving like you're wading through molasses. He'd bark, his voice a gravelly rasp. Her main co-worker on the day shift was Chloe, a woman a few years older than Mia, with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. Chloe viewed the world through a lens of cynical self-interest. To her, kindness was a weakness to be exploited. "You're too nice, Mia," Chloe said one Tuesday afternoon, snapping her gum as she leaned against the counter. "See that guy at table 6, the one in the suit? He's been eyeing the check for 10 minutes. Bet you $1 he's a cheap tipper. Don't give him your sunshine and rainbows routine. It's wasted energy." Mia just offered a weak smile and went to table 6. The man in the suit left her exactly 10%. Chloe just smirked. That Tuesday was particularly brutal. The lunchtime rush was a chaotic whirlwind of orders, spills, and complaints. A child had dumped a milkshake on the floor. Sal had yelled at her for using too many napkins to clean it up, and a customer had accused her of short-changing him by $1, making a scene until Sal grudgingly opened the till to give it to him, glaring at Mia the entire time. By 2:30 p.m., the chaos had subsided, leaving behind a battlefield of dirty tables and a bone-deep weariness in Mia's soul. She finally had a moment to grab her staff meal. Today, it was a thin lentil soup and a turkey sandwich. The bread was dry, the single slice of turkey translucent. But to Mia, it was sustenance. It was the fuel she needed to get through the next 5 hours of her shift. She took her tray to the small, secluded booth in the back, the one with the cracked vinyl seat that nobody ever wanted. She bowed her head for a moment, not in prayer, but just to gather her strength. She was about to take her first bite when the bell above the diner door chimed softly. An old man stood hesitantly just inside the doorway. He was frail, swallowed by a threadbare grey coat that was hopelessly inadequate for the city's biting autumn wind. His face was a roadmap of hardship, with deep-set wrinkles and pale, watery eyes that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. He clutched a worn tweed cap in his gnarled, trembling hands. He didn't approach the counter. He just stood there looking at the menu board with an expression of profound, heartbreaking hunger. Sal glanced up from his ledger. "Hey, Pop, this ain't a shelter. You buying or flying?" The old man flinched, his shoulders hunching. I was just looking," he mumbled, his voice raspy with disuse. He started to turn towards the door, his movements slow and pained. Something inside Mia broke. She saw not just a homeless man, but the embodiment of every fear she had. She saw loneliness. She saw hunger. She saw the world's indifference. In his watery eyes, she saw the same desperation she felt when she looked at Leo's medical bills. Without a second thought, she picked up her tray. "Don't even think about it," Chloe hissed from behind the counter, where she was polishing silverware with a practiced, bored air. "Sal will have your hide if you give him free food." Mia ignored her. She walked towards the old man, her heart pounding in her chest. As Mia approached, the old man shrank back, as if expecting to be scolded or thrown out. His eyes darted from her to the door, ready to flee. The smell of the street of cold dampness and long-term neglect clung to him, a stark contrast to the diner's greasy warmth. "Sir," Maya's voice was soft, barely a whisper. "Are you hungry?" He looked at her, his expression a mixture of surprise and suspicion. He simply nodded, a slow, tired movement of his head. He seemed too weary for words. "Please," she said, gesturing to the booth she had just vacated. "Sit down. It's warm here." He hesitated, his gaze flickering toward Sal, who was now watching them with narrowed, hawk-like eyes. "It's okay," Mia reassured him, placing a hand gently on his thin, bony arm. The fabric of his coat was coarse and frayed beneath her fingers. "Sit with me." He allowed her to guide him to the booth. He sank onto the cracked vinyl seat with a heavy sigh, as if the simple act of sitting was a monumental effort. He placed his worn cap on the table, his hands trembling so badly he could barely let it go. Mia slid her tray onto the center of the table, the bowl of lentil soup, the sad little turkey sandwich, a glass of water. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. "I was just about to have my lunch," she said, her voice bright with a forced cheerfulness she didn't feel. "But I'm not that hungry, and I hate to see food go to waste. Would you share it with me?" She knew it was a lie. A gnawing, ravenous hunger was clawing at her stomach. She hadn't eaten since the small bowl of oatmeal she'd had 17 hours ago. But the look in this man's eyes was more powerful than her own physical need. The old man stared at the food, then back at her. A single tear traced a clean path through the grime on his cheek. You don't have to do that, miss," he rasped. "I want to," Mia said firmly, pushing the bowl of soup towards him. "Please, eat." For a long moment, he just looked at it. Then, with shaking hands, he picked up the spoon. He brought it to his lips and took a sip of the warm soup. His eyes closed, and a shudder of pure, unadulterated relief ran through his frail body. He began to eat slowly at first, then with more urgency, but never with greed. It was the careful, deliberate way of someone who didn't know where their next meal was coming from. Mia took the knife from the tray and carefully cut the sandwich in half. She placed one half on a napkin in front of him and took the other for herself. She took a small bite, chewing slowly to make it last, her own hunger momentarily forgotten in the face of his overwhelming need. They ate in silence for a few minutes. From across the diner she could feel Sal's glare like a physical weight on her back. Chloe was whispering to another waitress, Maria, and they both glanced over Chloe with a look of derision. Maria with a flicker of sympathy. "What's your name?" Mia asked gently, hoping to break the thick silence. The man swallowed a mouthful of sandwich before answering. "Arthur," he said, his voice a little stronger now. "My name is Arthur." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Arthur. I'm Mia." He gave her a small, fragile smile. "You are a very kind young woman, Mia. Everyone needs a little kindness." She replied the words feeling hollow, even as she said them. The world hadn't been kind to her or Leo. "More than they know," Arthur agreed, his gaze distant. "More than they know." He finished his half of the sandwich and the soup, wiping the bowl clean with the last piece of bread. He drank the entire glass of water in one long draught. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. A little color had returned to his cheeks. The desperate, hunted look in his eyes had softened into one of weary gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means." "Thank you." "You're welcome, Arthur," Mia said, her heart aching. "I wish I could do more." He slowly pushed himself up from the booth. "You've done more than enough." He reached into the deep pocket of his tattered coat, and his hand fumbled around for a moment. Mia thought he might be looking for a coin or two, and she was ready to politely refuse. Instead, he pulled out something small and dark. He placed it on the table. It was a small, hand-carved wooden chess piece, a knight. It was beautifully made, but worn smooth with age and countless touches. The dark wood was polished to a soft sheen in some places and nicked and scarred in others. I have nothing to give you," Arthur said, his cheeks flushing slightly. "But I want you to have this. As a token, a reminder that even in a difficult position, a knight can change the game with one unexpected move." Mia looked at the small, intricate horse. It felt strangely heavy in her palm. "I can't take this. It's beautiful. It must be special to you." "It is," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "That's why I want you to have it. For the kindness you've shown a stranger." Before she could protest further, he turned and walked towards the door, his steps a little steadier than when he had arrived. He gave her one last, grateful nod, and then was gone, the bell above the door chiming his departure. Mia sat there staring at the empty soup bowl and the small wooden knight in her hand. Her stomach rumbled, a painful reminder of the lunch she had given away. "Well, I hope you feel good about yourself." Chloe's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. She stood by the table, a rag in her hand, her expression dripping with sarcasm. You just gave your only meal to some bum who's probably going to use the energy to go panhandle for booze money. He was hungry, Chloe, Mia said, slipping the chess piece into her apron pocket. We're all hungry, Mia, Chloe retorted, wiping the table with aggressive swipes. The difference is, some of us are smart enough to feed ourselves first. Sal's pissed. He saw the whole thing. He said, if you ever pull a stunt like that again, you're out. Mia's blood ran cold. She couldn't lose this job. She was so close. The weight of the $3,450 deposit settled back onto her shoulders, heavier than ever before. She looked down at her empty hands. The warmth from the small wooden knight in her pocket was the only thing that kept the despair from completely overwhelming her. The following week was a study in misery. A cold, relentless rain fell over the city, turning the streets into a grey, reflective misery. The diner was damp and smelled of wet wool and despair. Mia worked on autopilot, the exhaustion settling deep into her bones. Every customer's face seemed to blur into one. Her feet throbbed, her back ached, and the number she was now just $420 away from the deposit was a constant chanting mantra in her head. She kept the wooden knight in her pocket, its smooth, worn surface, a small secret comfort. She'd take it out in the quiet moments, tracing the delicate carving with her thumb. It was a foolish thing, but it reminded her of Arthur's words. A knight can change the game with one unexpected move. It felt less like a prophecy, and more like a cruel joke. Her life wasn't a chess game, it was a slow losing battle of attrition. On Thursday, during another punishing lunch rush, the bell on the door chimed. Mia, balancing 3 plates on her arm, glanced up. It was him. Arthur. He was soaked to the bone, his thin coat offering no protection from the downpour. Water dripped from the brim of his tweed cap, forming a small puddle at his feet. He shivered violently, a tremor that shook his entire body. He wasn't looking at the menu this time. He was looking directly at her, his eyes pleading. Chloe saw him from the counter. "Oh, look who's back. Your charity case. Told you he'd be back for another freebie." Sal emerged from the kitchen, a scowl etched on his face. "Mia, get him out of here. He's dripping all over the floor. We're a restaurant, not a flop house." Mia's heart clenched. She couldn't just throw him out into the freezing rain. She put the plates down on a nearby table and walked towards Arthur, intercepting him before Sal could. "Arthur," she said, her voice low, "you're soaked. You need to get somewhere warm." I'm so cold." He chattered, his teeth clicking together. "Just for a minute, miss. Just to get out of the rain." Mia looked at Sal, who was giving her a death glare. She knew she was walking on a knife's edge. She couldn't give him food. "But maybe—" "Okay," she whispered, leading him to the same back booth. "Just for a few minutes until the rain lets up a little. Stay here." She went behind the counter, ignoring Chloe's smug smirk. She grabbed a mug. "What do you think you're doing, Evans?" Sal growled, appearing beside her. "A cup of hot water," she said, quickly, her voice steady, despite the fear churning in her gut. "It's just water, Sal. It costs nothing. He's freezing." "I don't care. I don't want him taking up a booth that a paying customer could use," he snarled. "The diner is half empty, and no one ever sits in that booth anyway." Mia shot back, a spark of defiance flaring within her. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Sal stared at her, his eyes cold and hard. He seemed to be weighing the cost of a cup of hot water against the satisfaction of firing her on the spot. Finally he grunted. 5 minutes, then he's out. And this is your last warning, Evans. I'm not running a charity." Mia quickly filled the mug from the hot water dispenser, her hands shaking slightly. She took it to Arthur. His own hands were trembling so much he could barely hold the warm ceramic. He wrapped his palms around it, letting the heat seep into his frozen fingers, his eyes closing in relief. "Thank you," he breathed, the steam warming his face. "Thank you, Mia." She gave him a sad smile and hurried back to her tables. For the next 10 minutes, she worked in a state of high anxiety, constantly glancing at the clock and at Sal, who was pointedly watching her. She saw Arthur finish the water and remained seated, just soaking in the warmth. The rain outside was now coming down in sheets. Finally, Sal stormed over to the booth. "All right, time's up, Grandpa. Hit the road." Arthur flinched and started to rise. Mia rushed over. "Sal, please look at the weather," she pleaded. "Not my problem," Sal snapped. He grabbed Arthur's arm. "Out! Don't touch him," Mia cried, placing herself between them. "I'll pay for his time. Take it out of my tips. Charge me for the booth rental. I don't care. Just let him stay a little longer." Sal looked at her as if she were insane, but the mention of money seemed to placate him slightly. "Fine. $10 for the inconvenience, and it comes out of your pocket right now." $10. That was 2 hours of work. It was another step away from Leo's deposit. Mia's heart sank, but she didn't hesitate. She pulled the crumpled bills from her apron, her tips from the morning rush, and slapped them on the counter. "There, he can stay for another half hour." Sal snatched the money and stomped away, muttering under his breath. Mia went back to Arthur's booth, her cheeks burning with a mixture of anger and humiliation. Arthur looked at her. His eyes filled with a deep, profound sorrow. "You shouldn't have done that," he said softly. "He is not a good man." "It's just money," Mia said, trying to sound nonchalant. "It is never just money to those who have none," he replied wisely. He reached into his coat again. Mia expected to see the chess piece, but his hand was empty. He just looked at her, his gaze intense. "Twice now you have chosen compassion over comfort. That is a rare currency." He stayed for the full half hour. When he left, the rain had lessened to a drizzle. He paused at the door and gave her a long, searching look that she couldn't quite decipher, before disappearing into the grey afternoon. That night, as Mia counted her meagre tips, she was $10 short. The envelope under her mattress felt no heavier. The deadline was now just over a week away. Despair, cold and numbing, began to seep into her heart. She held the wooden knight, its form a familiar comfort, in her hand. An unexpected move. But the game board of her life seemed to be shrinking, and she was running out of squares. The final days leading up to the deposit deadline were a blur of frantic anxiety. Mia picked up every extra shift she could, including a grueling double on Sunday that left her so exhausted she nearly fell asleep on the bus ride home. She subsisted on free crackers from the diner and tap water, the hunger pains a constant, dull ache beneath her ribs. Every dollar was a victory, every coin a tiny soldier in her desperate war against time. By the following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after she had paid Sal to let Arthur stay, she had done it. Her hands trembled as she counted the crumpled bills in the envelope for the 10th time. $3,452. She had made it. A wave of relief, so powerful it made her dizzy, washed over her. She could finally make the call, schedule the appointment, and give Leo the news. For the first time in months, a genuine, unforced smile touched her lips. She decided to call the clinic during her lunch break. The thought of hearing the receptionist confirm Leo's appointment was the only thing getting her through the morning rush. The day was cold and clear, and even the diner seemed a little less dreary. Around 11:30 a.m. the bell chimed. It was Arthur. This time he looked different. The profound weariness was still there, but it was overshadowed by a feverish glint in his eyes. His breathing was shallow and ragged, and he was leaning heavily against the doorframe. A part of Mia's heart sank, but the larger part, the part that had come to feel a strange connection to this man, went out to him. She hurried over. "Arthur, are you all right? Not feeling so well, Mia." He rasped a dry, hacking cough, rattling his chest. "Dizzy." He looked pale and clammy. Mia touched his forehead with the back of her hand. He was burning up. "You need to see a doctor," she said, alarmed. "There's a free clinic a few blocks from here." Can't walk that far," he wheezed. "Just need to sit. Just for a moment." Before she could guide him to a booth, he swayed on his feet, his eyes rolling back. Mia cried out and grabbed him, barely managing to stop him from collapsing onto the floor. With a strength born of adrenaline, she half-dragged, half-carried him to the back booth. "Chloe, get me a glass of water," she yelled. Chloe looked over, rolled her eyes, but complied. Sal came barreling out of the kitchen. "What in God's name is going on now?" "Evans!" He bellowed, his face turning a blotchy red. "He's sick, Sal. He collapsed. I think he has a fever," Mia explained, trying to get Arthur to sip some water. "Sick, I don't want a sick vagrant in my establishment. What if he's contagious? Get him out of here. Now call an ambulance if you have to, but get him out." "An ambulance ride will cost him money he doesn't have," Mia pleaded. "It will put him in debt for the rest of his life. Let me just call the clinic and see if their outreach van can come get him." "I don't care," Sal roared his voice, attracting the attention of the few customers in the diner. "I want him gone. This is the third time you've brought this bum in here. This is a business, not your personal pet project." "He's a human being," Mia fired back, her own voice rising with righteous anger. She was tired of Sal, tired of his cruelty, tired of a world that would let a man like Arthur suffer on the street. "That's it." Sal's face was purple with rage. "You're fired, Evans. You hear me? Fired. You care more about this worthless old man than you do about your job. So you can go be a social worker on your own time. Get your things and get out and take him with you." The words hit Mia like a physical blow. Fired. The floor seemed to drop out from under her. The noise of the diner faded into a dull roar in her ears. Her job, her only source of income, the money for Leo, the fragile hope she had so carefully constructed, shattered into a million pieces. Tears of shock and fury welled in her eyes. "You can't do this," she whispered, the fight draining out of her. "I just did," Sal said coldly. "Now get out before I call the cops and have you both arrested for trespassing." He turned and stomped back towards the kitchen. Chloe just stood behind the counter, polishing a glass, a small triumphant smirk on her face. The world spun around Mia. She was unemployed. Homelessness, a fear she had always kept at bay, now felt terrifyingly close. How would she pay rent? How would she eat? And Leo. Oh God, Leo. The money she had saved would be gone in a month, eaten up by basic survival. The therapy was a dream that had just died. Her grief was so immense, so suffocating, that it took her a moment to realize Arthur was speaking. He was sitting up straighter now, the feverish, dazed look in his eyes completely gone. He looked at her not with confusion, but with a sharp, piercing clarity. "He's right," Arthur said, his voice no longer the raspy, weak whisper of a sick old man. It was clear, firm and resonant, with an authority that was utterly astonishing. "You should go." Mia stared at him, bewildered. The sudden change was jarring. Arthur pushed himself out of the booth, standing to his full height. He was still thin, but he no longer seemed frail. The hunch in his shoulders was gone. He looked at the fired waitress, his pale eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't name, not pity, but something closer to profound respect. "You've passed," he said softly, almost to himself. Then louder to her, "Your compassion just cost you everything, Mia Evans, and because of that, it is about to give you the world." Mia could only stare, her mind reeling from the shock of being fired completely, unable to process the bizarre transformation of the man before her. He reached into his coat, and this time he pulled out not a chess piece, but a sleek, modern smartphone. With a few taps of his thumb, he made a call. "Harrison," he said into the phone, his voice crisp and commanding. "It's done. I found the one. Prepare the paperwork for the Leo's Hope Foundation. Initial endowment, $50 million. And have a car sent to the Silver Spoon Diner on Elm Street, immediately." He ended the call and looked at Mia, whose mouth was hanging open in stunned silence. "My name," he said, offering a small, sad smile, "is not Arthur. It is Alistair Finch." The name meant nothing to her. She was still trying to understand why the sick old man was talking about foundations and $50 million. "Let's go, Mia," he said gently. "It's time to leave this place behind." He started towards the door, then paused and turned to look at the stunned faces of Chloe and Sal, who had emerged from the kitchen to witness the commotion. Alistair Finch's eyes, no longer watery or weak, but sharp as ice, landed on Sal. "As for you, sir," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level, "you are about to learn a very expensive lesson about the true cost of cruelty." Mia felt like she was moving through a dream. One moment she was being fired, her world collapsing. The next she was standing on the sidewalk outside the Silver Spoon Diner. The cold autumn air a slap to her face, while the man she knew as Arthur spoke calmly into a phone about sums of money that were to her purely theoretical. A sleek black car, the kind Mia had only ever seen in movies, pulled silently to the curb. A man in a sharp suit with silver hair and a calm demeanor stepped out of the driver's side. "Mr. Finch, the car is ready." "Thank you, Harrison." Alistair said, his transformation from a shivering vagrant to a man of immense authority now complete. He opened the back door for Mia. "Please get in." Mia was frozen. I don't understand. Who are you? What is happening?" Her mind was a maelstrom of confusion and fear. Was this a prank? A scam? Was she having some kind of breakdown? "All of your questions will be answered, I promise," Alistair said, his voice gentle but firm. "But right now you are cold. You are in shock and you have just lost your job. The first step is to get you somewhere safe and warm." Numbly, she allowed him to guide her into the car. The interior was a world away from the cracked vinyl of the diner. The scent of rich leather filled the air, and the seat was soft and plush. The door closed with a solid, satisfying thud, shutting out the sounds of the city and the life she had known. As the car pulled away, she looked back at the diner. Sal and Chloe were standing at the window, their faces pressed against the glass, their expressions of shock and disbelief a mirror of her own. They drove in silence. Maya stared out the window at the familiar, gritty streets of her neighborhood, giving way to cleaner, wider avenues, lined with manicured trees and stately brownstones. She clutched her purse in her lap, the one containing the envelope with the 3,400 a pathetic talisman from a life that had seemingly ended an hour ago. The car eventually pulled into the private heated garage of a towering glass and steel skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. The name Finch Enterprises was emblazoned in discreet but powerful letters above the entrance. The lion. Mia had seen that logo before on news reports and in business magazines. It was the symbol of one of the largest and most powerful corporations in the country. Alistair Finch wasn't just a rich man. He was a titan, a legend, a billionaire. Mia felt a wave of nausea. She had given half her sandwich and a cup of soup to one of the wealthiest men in the world. She had lost her job defending him. The absurdity of it was overwhelming. Harrison, the man who had driven the car, led them to a private elevator. It ascended silently and swiftly, the numbers climbing at a dizzying rate. "Mr. Harrison is my chief counsel and most trusted advisor," Alistair explained as they rose. "He is one of the only people who was aware of my excursions." The elevator opened directly into a breathtaking penthouse office. One entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window, offering a panoramic view of the city below. The space was vast, furnished with a mixture of modern art and antique furniture. A massive mahogany desk stood before the window, but Alistair led her instead to a comfortable seating area with 2 leather armchairs and a low coffee table. "Please sit," he said. "Can I get you something? Coffee, tea, a proper meal?" Mia shook her head, unable to speak. She sank into one of the chairs, feeling small and out of place. Alistair sat opposite her. He looked at her for a long moment, his sharp eyes filled with a complex mix of apology and admiration. "I owe you an explanation, Mayor," he began, "and an apology. I never intended for you to lose your job. That was an unforeseen and unfortunate consequence for which I am deeply sorry. Though," he added with a grim smile, "it was perhaps the most illuminating part of my entire experiment." Experiment. Mare finally found her voice. It was a choked whisper. "Yes," he said, leaning forward. "You see, I have been blessed with incredible wealth, but it has become a curse. It built a wall around me. My own children see me as a walking vault. The people I meet want something from me. The world I live in is filled with sycophants and flatterers. I started to wonder if genuine, selfless kindness still existed, the kind that expects nothing in return." He paused, his gaze drifting towards the city below. "I grew up with nothing, Mia, in a place not so different from your own apartment. I remember the pangs of real hunger. I remember the sting of indifference. So I decided to go back, to become Arthur, to see the world from that perspective again. I visited shelters, soup kitchens, and places like the Silver Spoon Diner. For weeks, I saw the worst of humanity. People who would sneer, who would push me away, who saw me as an inconvenience or an object of disgust." His eyes returned to her, and they were filled with a raw intensity. "And then I met you. You who had so little. You were tired, you were hungry yourself. I could see it in your eyes. And yet you shared your only meal. You didn't do it for recognition. You did it because you saw a person in need. The second time you defended me, and spent your own hard-earned money to give me a few moments of warmth. And today you sacrificed your livelihood for a sick old stranger." He shook his head, a look of marvel on his face. "You didn't just pass my test, Mia. You redefined it." Mia's head was spinning. "The chess piece," she said, remembering the wooden knight still in her pocket. Alistair smiled. "My father carved it for me when I was a boy. He told me the same thing I told you, that a knight can change the game with an unexpected move. It's the only thing I have left of him. I gave it to you as a marker. I knew in that first moment that you were special. I just had to be sure." Tears began to stream down Mia's face, born not of sadness, but of overwhelming, confusing release. The stress of the past few months, the shock of the day's events, it all came pouring out. Alistair waited patiently until her sobs subsided. Then Harrison, who had been standing discreetly by the desk, approached and placed a folder on the coffee table. "Maya." Alistair said, his voice soft again. I can give you money. I can write you a check that would solve all your problems, and you would never have to work another day in your life. But that feels insufficient. A person with your character, your integrity, shouldn't be a passive recipient. They should be a force for good. He tapped the folder. I have wanted to start a charitable foundation for years, one dedicated to providing aid to families crushed by medical debt, to help people who fall through the cracks of the system, people like you and your brother. Mia's head snapped up. My brother. How do you know about Leo? A flicker of shame crossed Alistair's face. Forgive me. After our first meeting, I had Harrison do a little research. I needed to understand what you were fighting for. I learned about Leo's condition and about the $450 deposit for Dr. Rossi's clinic. He pushed the folder towards her. This is the charter for a new non-profit organization. I am endowing it with an initial capital of $50 million. Its name is the Leo's Hope Foundation. Mia stared at the words on the cover page, her brother's name in elegant official print. She felt like she couldn't breathe. The foundation will need a director, Alistair continued. Someone to run the day-to-day operations, to review cases, to meet with families. Someone who understands what they're going through. Someone with unimpeachable integrity and boundless compassion. I don't want a bureaucrat. I want a warrior. I want you, Mia. He opened the folder. Inside was a contract. The position comes with a starting salary, of course, and a corporate apartment, and the foundation's first official act will be to cover the full lifetime cost of Leo's treatment at any facility in the world. Mia stared at the contract, the black ink swimming before her eyes. The numbers, the clauses, the official letterhead, it all felt like a language from another planet. Director, salary, corporate apartment. The words were meaningless static compared to the one phrase that echoed in her soul, the full lifetime cost of Leo's treatment. I don't know what to say, she stammered, looking from the papers to Alistair's expectant face. I'm a waitress. I have no experience running a foundation. I wouldn't even know where to begin. You begin with your heart, Mia, Alistair said gently. You have the one qualification that can't be taught in any business school you care, deeply. Harrison and my team will handle the legal and financial structures. We will provide you with all the training and support you need. What I need from you is your perspective, your humanity. When a family in crisis comes to us, I want them to see your face, not the face of a banker. He leaned back in his chair. I am an old man, Mia. My children are waiting for me to die so they can divide my empire. I have spent my life building things, skyscrapers, companies of vast fortune. But none of it feels as important as this. This is a chance to build a legacy of kindness. But I cannot do it alone. I need a partner. I need you. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. This wasn't just a reward, it was a plea. He was offering her not just a job, but a purpose that aligned perfectly with the deepest, most desperate wish of her heart. Slowly she reached out and picked up the pen that lay next to the contract. It was heavy and cold in her hand. She thought of Leo, of his smile, of the incredible worlds he drew. She thought of the years of worry, the sleepless nights, the constant grinding fear. And she thought of Arthur, the shivering old man in the rain, and the simple human impulse that had made her act. She signed her name. Her signature, usually a hurried scrawl on credit card receipts, looked elegant and decisive on the crisp, important paper. A wide, genuine smile spread across Alistair Finch's face. He stood up and extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Director Evans. As Mia shook his hand, She felt a profound shift within herself. The crushing weight that had hunched her shoulders for years seemed to evaporate. She felt taller, lighter. The fear was gone, replaced by a blossoming, terrifying, and exhilarating sense of hope. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. Harrison walked her through the initial paperwork, explaining things in clear, simple terms. She was given a new phone, a laptop, and a set of keys. "These are for your apartment," Harrison explained. "It's in the Meridian building, 2 blocks from here. Your brother's medical coordinator will be in touch with you by the end of the day to arrange his immediate transfer to Dr. Rossi's private wing. All expenses are being handled." Every sentence he spoke seemed to dismantle another wall of her prison. Later that afternoon, Alistair had a catered lunch of hot, delicious food brought to the office. As she ate real food, grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, Mia realized she was ravenous. It was the best meal she had ever tasted. During their meal, Alistair told her more about his life, the poverty of his childhood, the relentless drive that propelled him to success, and the spiritual emptiness that had met him at the top. He had created his Arthur persona not just as a test for others, but as a way to reconnect with the man he had been before the money. "In a way, you saved me as much as I am helping you," he confessed, looking out at the city he owned. "You reminded me of what truly matters." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Mia thought of her old life as if it belonged to someone else. The greasy smell of the diner, Sal's barking voice, the throbbing in her feet. It was all fading. "There's one more thing," Alistair said, his expression turning serious. "The matter of Sal and the Silver Spoon Diner." Harrison placed a tablet on the table, displaying a live news feed. The headline read, "Billionaire Alistair Finch goes undercover as homeless exposes abusive business practices." Mia gasped. The story was already breaking. A customer in the diner, a freelance journalist who had been quietly eating a slice of pie in a corner booth, had witnessed the entire exchange. He had seen Mia's compassion and Sal's cruelty, and he had filmed Alistair's shocking transformation and final words on his phone. The story was going viral. The diner's online reviews were plummeting, and a crowd of reporters was already gathered outside its doors. "Sal made his choice," Alistair said, his voice cold as steel. "He chose cruelty and greed. The free market can be a harsh arbiter of such choices. But Chloe, she is a different matter. She is cynical and selfish, but perhaps she is that way because life has been unkind to her too. The foundation will need staff. An assistant, perhaps. Someone who needs a second chance." He looked at Mia. "The choice, of course, will be yours, Director." Mia was stunned by the offer. The thought of offering Chloe a job after all her mockery was difficult. But then she remembered Alistair's words, a chance to build a legacy of kindness. Kindness wasn't just for the deserving. Sometimes it was most powerful when offered to those who seemed to need it most. It was a problem for another day. Her first priority was making a call. Her hands trembled as she dialed the number to the small house where Leo lived with their foster aunt. "Mia, is everything okay?" her aunt's worried voice answered. "Everything," Mia said, her own voice, breaking with joy, "is about to be perfect. Can you put Leo on the phone? I have some news." 2 months later, Mia stood not behind a grimy diner counter, but beside a state-of-the-art hydrotherapy pool. The air smelled of clean chlorine and hope. Her Leo was in the water, supported by Dr. Isabella Rossi herself. He was laughing his face alight with a joy she hadn't seen in years as he kicked his legs against the water's gentle resistance. The movement was small, but it was a miracle. It was a beginning. Life had changed at a dizzying speed. Her corporate apartment was beautiful, with a spare room that she had turned into an art studio, for Leo filled with every kind of paint and canvas he could ever want. She had a new wardrobe of professional clothes, but her most prized possession was still the small wooden knight which now sat on her desk, the desk of the executive director of the Leo's Hope Foundation. The foundation's launch had been a major news event. Mia, terrified, but resolute, had stood at a podium next to Alistair and told her story. Not the billionaire's story, but her story, the story of a desperate sister trying to save her brother. She spoke of the impossible choices faced by families crushed by medical bills, and she pledged that the foundation would be a lifeline. Applications had poured in from all over the country. Her first official act as director was approving a grant for a young girl in Ohio who needed a custom-fitted prosthetic, a case that had been denied by insurance 3 times. Her second was funding a transport van for a rural community of elderly cancer patients who had no way to get to their chemotherapy appointments. Each file she reviewed, each family she spoke to, was a reflection of her own struggle. She saw their pain, and for the first time in her life, she had the power to alleviate it. Alistair was a constant presence, a mentor and a friend. He never interfered with her decisions, but was always there to offer guidance. "Invest in people, Mia," he'd told her. "The returns are far greater than any stock." One crisp December afternoon, Mia found herself driving through her old neighborhood. On a whim, she pulled over across the street from the Silver Spoon Diner. A large "For Lease" sign was plastered on the front window. The journalist's story and the subsequent public outrage had been swift and brutal. Sal's business had withered and died within a month. Mia felt a pang not of satisfaction, but of a strange, hollow sadness for the waste of it all. As she was about to drive away, she saw a familiar figure walking down the street, head bowed against the wind. It was Chloe. She looked thinner, her sharp features softened by weariness. She was carrying a bag of groceries that looked pitifully light. Mia thought of Alistair's challenge. She took a deep breath, got out of the car, and called her name. "Chloe." Chloe looked up, her eyes widening in shock when she saw Mia. A flush of shame and resentment crossed her face. "Well, well," she sneered, her old defense mechanism kicking in. "Look at you. Director Evans, come back to gloat." "No," Mia said simply. "I came to offer you a job." Chloe stared at her, speechless. "The foundation is growing," Mia continued, her voice even. "I need an administrative assistant, someone who is organized, who knows how to handle pressure, and who knows what it's like to struggle. The pay is good. The benefits are excellent. It's a chance to do something that matters." Chloe's cynical mask crumbled, her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she whispered. "After how I treated you, why would you help me?" Mia thought for a moment, her hand instinctively going to her coat pocket, where she still sometimes carried the wooden knight. "Because my mentor taught me that the best investment you can make is in people," Mia said, offering a small smile. "And because everyone deserves a chance to make an unexpected move." Chloe stood there on the cold sidewalk, the meager bag of groceries at her feet, and for the first time she looked at Mia not with envy or derision, but with a dawning sense of wonder. In the dying light of the afternoon, a new game was just beginning. Mia's story is a powerful reminder that the true measure of our wealth isn't what we keep for ourselves, but what we are willing to give away. In a world that often rewards selfishness, she made a choice rooted in pure compassion, and that single act created a ripple that she could never have imagined. It proves that you don't need to be a billionaire to change someone's world, Sometimes all it takes is a shared lunch, a moment of warmth, or the courage to stand up for another human being. Her story wasn't about being saved by a rich man. It was about a woman whose own inherent goodness was so powerful it inspired a billionaire to become a better man. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of your own kindness, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need this message of hope. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell for more real-life stories that restore our faith in humanity. What is the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? Share your story in the comments below.